Hey everyone, welcome back to the Custody Queens Off the Clock. I am Kristen Holstrom, your host, and today's episode is going to be wild. Okay, now I know everybody is noticing, where is Sam? Where is the tall custody queen? Well, she is actually not in the office today, so I brought another one of my favorite queens here today, and we have Brittany Van Veen.
Hey, everybody.
And Brittany is also a certified family law specialist. She works with us here at Custody Queens, the actual family law side. But she is also just as crazy as Sam and she is going to jump into this episode. We are talking today about The Unknown Number, the Netflix documentary that was just dropped. So I know many of you binge watched it like we all did. I've actually watched it twice because sometimes when I watch it the first time, I have an emotional response. And then the second time, I actually put my analytical lawyer hat on and I start really diving into the sub issues and then going down rabbit holes. So remember, we are not here to solve cases. We are here to question everything. And there's some really cool family law crossovers that we're going to get in today too. So Britt, take it from here.
All right. So Unknown Number, this crazy documentary that we've all been obsessing over and reading about. It takes place in Beale City, Michigan, and we start out being introduced to a 13-year-old, Lauren Licari, who has a 13-year-old boyfriend, Owen McKinney, and the two of them start receiving very odd and some would say abusive messages that are coming from an unknown number, an anonymous texter who's suddenly sending some very aggressive messages out of the blue to these two 13-year-olds.
And when we look at these messages, they start out someone like harassing and questioning and almost kind of like bullyish. Like it's, I kind of got the idea. And trigger warning, if you have not seen this, you should go watch it before you finish this because there will be some spoiler alerts. Yeah, you're not going to be able to go watch it organically if you watch this. But when my gut instinct was that it was a fellow classmate that was jealous of either their very sweet, very organic relationship between Owen and Lauren, or it was someone that was clearly very jealous of the beautiful, athletic, and kind of admired from afar Lauren.
And I think it's important to note that, and they set the stage for us in the beginning of the documentary, that this is a very small town. This is not a large city. This is a small rural area where people all seem to know each other. And this isn't just, the young kids who all seem to know each other, but the generations prior. And I myself living a large portion of my life in a small town can attest firsthand. It gives a very different dynamic socially when you've got, especially a small population and a small youth population, you've got that feeling of intimacy and knowing people even if you don't really know them. So we get these messages and they've got this personal element to them, to these attacks that we're getting, where they seem like they're people that really know Lauren or know Owen in the attacks that they're getting, which begs the question, is it someone who actually does know them? Is it someone in the town? But again, when you've got that small town dynamic, I think it adds an extra layer to this where there's going to be more, I guess, readily available information about their lives that can be used in this manner that it had.
Yeah, and it should be noted that Lauren and Owen, it was a very young kind of friendship that turned into a little bit more than that for that age. It seemed like a very age-appropriate relationship. Obviously, we only see what we see within that documentary, but the families were very close. I mean, I think they were vacationing together. They were having grill outs, as I think they call them in the Midwest. But it was, like Brittany said, it wasn't just, two classmates. I'm sure that the uncles and the aunts and, you go to the grocery store and everybody knows everybody and you're all going to the same family physician. I did think, Britt, that played a big part in this whole thing.
Definitely. And these messages, they start out, I don't want to say tame, because I think anytime you're getting the kind of messages they were getting, I wouldn't call them tame, but they don't start out as bad as they get. Basically, the intent of the messages seems to focus a lot around this relationship between these two 13-year-olds and wanting the relationship to end, encouraging them to end. Stemming from a Halloween party, which I got very like Mean Girl vibes from this Halloween party. It's, Owen's invited, but Lauren and maybe her family weren't invited. So it very much seems like a very cliquish, and I think it gives that high schoolish vibe to the messages because they're stemming from this Halloween party uh, that maybe not everybody's being included in. But from there, things escalate very quickly. The messages take on a whole different tone. They are exceedingly aggressive. They are very sexually inappropriate in nature. They are encouraging Lauren to self-harm and encouraging her to essentially unalive herself. At times alluding to it, at times very graphically saying
Very,
this.
yeah, very, very blunt. I think you should go unalive yourself. Do the world a favor.
And again, if she's 13 when these messages are starting,
I know that's crazy because
awful.
my daughter's 11, and I was thinking about that going, they're still so innocent. And yes, they're maturing at that age and they're going through puberty and they're really growing up. But at the same time, I don't know that they're necessarily equipped with life skills to be
Oh,
able to just ignore it, which is what Lauren's mom was continuing and her dad, they were continuing to say, just ignore it. Like, be the bigger person. This is really bad. It's not appropriate. We can't figure out who it is. I know the school is involved at some point. Law enforcement was involved at some point, but I don't know that a 13-year-old truly has the ability to just read something that vulgar and then just put it, in the rearview mirror.
compartmentalize it to somewhere else. No, of course not. I mean, your frontal lobe isn't isn't done developing for more than 10 years after that point. You're not in any mental. I mean, honestly, if I was getting messages like that, that would be a struggle for me. As a 36
Right.
year old woman. So to have a 14-year-old child, because it starts when she's 13, it goes on for almost 2 full years, to be receiving these messages, and not just receiving these messages, being bombarded with these messages. We're seeing that these messages are coming in back to back to back. They're coming in during the school day.
Every
They're
day.
coming in the middle of the night every day. There's no reprieve. It's not just the nature of the messages, it's the volume and the frequency of the messages that really could be harmful to anyone, I think, at any age.
And I think that some of the content of the messages, it was very clear that it was someone that had some sort of direct relationship or knowledge to Lauren and Owen, or each of them separately as well. Or it was maybe the child of somebody that had a close relationship, but it's not someone that they just met on social media and that was starting to attack them from some sort of virtual fascination with Lauren.
Law enforcement gets involved, the parents are involved. We see throughout the documentary, we're seeing both of Lauren's parents, her mom specifically, Kendra, being very seemingly involved in the investigative process, trying to figure out what's going on. You see Owen's mom is very, very involved. There are other children throughout the documentary that are implicated throughout this. The school does get involved. Local law enforcement gets involved. It seems there's some potential commentary about whether or not they were effective in the way in which they were approaching the investigation, which again, I also think is worth noting when you've got a small town and a smaller law enforcement presence, perhaps they may not have the training to do a further investigation or really the experience to address something like this, especially once we're in the digital age. Bullying is not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. So then because of
Yeah,
that,
and I do think, because initially my gut too was that law enforcement was like, they absolutely could have done more. But then you also have to remember, this was a few years ago. This was really before AI, has taken over. But I was happy to see that the school principal was actually insisting on more. I mean, they were checking cameras, they were planting information to see who in the group was taking that information and either A, acting on it, or B, sharing it with someone outside the group. I mean, I do think the school principal took it more seriously than other people. I would hope that if this happened right now in 2025, sitting here today, that they would have the tools to expand on what was done. I mean, it kind of takes me back to that Amy Bradley cruise ship, and the cruise ship was like, oh, well, we can't stop the boat to do a search because I have 2,000 people having fun. So now, 30 years later, we still don't know where she is. I would hope that we are progressing each and every year to get more tools, understanding, and awareness about all of these issues. And you're right, Britt, it's taken bullying to a whole nother level.
So, all of the pressure of all of these messages and the disturbing contents of them ends up leading to this poor young couple breaking up, ending their their relationship. And then we get to the biggest twist, perhaps, of it all and find out that the person who's been sending these text messages is none other than Lauren's mom, Kendra, who's been, I know, my
You know,
goodness.
I did not I knew that there had to be something internal, but I don't know. That was a wild card for me. That wasn't in my bingo card.
I think that how could that be in any of our bingo cards? No matter how much kind of hinting towards it there could have been, no matter how many, like, because if you watch it again, I feel like you start to see warning signs.
Oh, yeah.
But I think just our brains aren't going to go to, well, the mom would be doing, especially with the nature, the graphic nature of the unalive yourself messages, the nature of the messages that are being sent sexually about this 13, 14, 15-year-old child.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, these weren't just addressing her outfits or her clothes. I mean, they went from aggressive to your boyfriend hates you, everybody hates you, he's getting insert sexual acts from another person to go unalive yourself. You are the worst human in the world. Do the world a favor, off yourself. I mean, they went so extreme. And then the mom is being interviewed through this entire process, this documentary. And when I went back and watched it the second time, I was like, you know, she got paid for that, right? So clearly there's a reason why she participated, but have some freaking humility. And I don't know that I ever could have gone on and done a show talking about how my literally two personalities kicked in of how I'm this super protective mother and want to do anything for my, my 13, then 15-year-old daughter to the person that is creating this shame, this harassment, this abuse, and what she has put these two teenage kids through for years. Oh God. Don't even
And
get me
that's
started.
the thing. And the way that for the first half of the documentary, she aligns herself with the other outraged mob, the way that she involves and inserts herself through the investigative process, through coming to the school. I mean, they talk about the fact that her and Owen's mom are at the school, they're present, they're trying to, and that
They're
outrage,
united front.
and then to know that the whole time, and not just that the whole time it's actually happening in real time, you're the perpetrator, but the reality of knowing that you, Kendra's sitting in a room to talk about this, knowing this is going to be on this documentary, knowing it's going to be broadcast, and spending the first hour talking as if she is victimized by this in the same way that her daughter is
Recreating the
just.
scenes. Yeah, no, recreating the scenes of the first year, that this was happening and recreating the scenes of going to the school as united front as the two parents. And I think the dads went too. It was this united front. And then, just how concerned watching that recreation, it just for me was like such a dirty level. And I'm guessing the only reason she did it was for somewhat of a 5-minute fame and or the paycheck that came with it. Maybe it was more the first than the second, but
And that
I
was
just whew.
I think that was my biggest probably flaw that I'll highlight to the individuals who made this, in Netflix on the documentary, is that too much of the focal point is on the person who actually caused this. And it feeds to me watching it back, knowing the reality and the truth. It feels too like it's feeding into the attention that is clearly desired here, because we start to question, the motivations. Like, what would motivate a parent to send messages like this to a child? What would make her feel justified? We get some sort of explanation from her about her own traumatic past, which I will say is awful. She talks about her own experiences with SA and with, the trauma that comes with, and her own victimhood, but you can't utilize your victimhood as an excuse to victimize others, especially the person who relies on you most in the world
Yeah, I
to
found that
protect.
part to be sickening, and her attempt at justifying her behavior. I would have had a lot more respect if she just came out and said, I struggle with mental health. I was abused. What I did was not acceptable or appropriate or healthy on any level. I have spent the last couple years getting treatment for my own childhood trauma and growing as a person and as a mother. Like, I would have had so much more respect for that. But her attempt to excuse the 2 years of telling your own child to go off themselves because you had been through that yourself on some level and you had been a victim. And so therefore you wanted to protect her by causing her. I mean, the amount of Lauren's going to have to deal with this for the rest of her life. And I truly hope that she is getting treatment and getting the appropriate mental health treatment for her to be able to work through this, process it, because I can tell you that this is something that is going to haunt her for a really long time. And you can tell so deeply how badly she just wants to be loved by her mother, and on some level has excused the childlike behavior.
Oh, 100%.
That
Even
threw me. That threw me.
if you watch the scene where they tell Lauren that it was her mom behind the messages, I have so many issues with just the way in which they approach it, the lack of direct, like they don't even just directly tackle the issue and tell her. They're kind of skirting around it in the language they're using, and having the mom, having Kendra physically present, sitting next to her daughter while telling her this. And then you see her immediately get up and she starts touching Lauren's face and touching her
God, it was so
hair.
creepy.
It
It
was
was so creepy.
awful
God,
to
and
watch.
honestly, I'm waiting for the law enforcement officer to actually step in and intervene, and I don't know if many of you picked up on this, but there's about 200 bottles of alcohol on the kitchen table behind this scene, and I'm thinking, okay, are they, do they distribute or do they work for a company that, I don't know what was going on there, but I don't know if the writers were trying to give a subtle hint as to maybe what was going on in that household at that time. But the touching of the face, I was like, when is this police officer going to step in and
This is
say, or the
the
dad,
literal
to take your hands off her?
Yeah, this is the literal victim of years of torment that you've been investigating. And you're going, in what other circumstance, maybe where the mom isn't the perpetrator, are you allowing the abuser to comfort or attempt to comfort the abused while you
Yeah,
tell the
imagine if that
abused?
was, a neighbor down the street and was a male. Could you imagine them being able to touch their face and hug her? And I'm so sorry that I did this. Like, what you did was traumatic.
Exactly. And it screams to me of the overall issues. I mean, because as we watch this unfold and as a mom myself, and we're hearing that a mom has done this to her child, you start to question what is happening behind the scenes? What is going on in her head that in any way this became possible? And what jumps out to me, and they touch on it a little bit, I think, in the documentary about, they bring up the term the cyber Munchausen by proxy and some mental health concerns. But to me, it all stems to a very clear need to be the center of attention.
I
And
agree with you.
it allowed that moment to then become centralized on Kendra trying to continue to portray the doting mother, and to me, perpetuate what's likely been, in my opinion, a lifelong cycle of abuse to her daughter by again making her the center of the tension as the daughter is getting cripplingly awful news. It just the whole thing, was just
No,
alarming.
I found it to be creepy. I found it that we were like you think. I think we were discounting the level of mental health issues that mom had. Her whole position that she was somehow protecting her daughter, or she was the one doing this because at the end of the day, she was still her mom and she was doing it in a controlled way. I found it to be so sick. And I'm not discounting what her mom went through, but the fact that the mom didn't get treatment and the mom then did exactly to her own daughter, which we all want to be better. We want it better for our kids, right? That's the whole purpose of being a parent is like, I did things great. My parents did things great, but I want better for my kids. That's kind of the cool thing about being a parent. And I don't know that we all are successful looking back, but you always take the things that you think your parents did great. And then, there's things that, hey, maybe I could do this slightly different. And then you start going, okay, I've 100% turned in to my mom, which is mostly good. But then, there's things where I'm like, I, I, I see how, things evolve over the years and it's hard. But at the end of the day, I would never, ever cause my child harm like that. I always want to take my kids' pain away. I have such a hard time even taking the iPad away, or like disciplining in such a small way because I have such amazing kids. And I just really have a hard time with that. And even just looking at their sad eyes over not being able to play Roblox for a couple days. But to put your child through something that truly is going to give her it's just going to cause her pain on some level for probably a really, really long
The rest of her life. I mean, I don't see how these are your most formative years, and the person that's supposed to protect you is the person who's tearing you down in such a like deep way. Again, these weren't superficial, texts. These were attacking every aspect of her life. It was attacking her relationship to the point of breaking them up, attacking her friendships, making her doubt her friends, making her question every single person.
other people getting facing consequences or getting interrogated, and all of these other high school kids who may not have been in that crowd or suspicious in some way were literally getting pulled into this investigation and facing consequences, and she's just sitting in the background going like, yeah, I mean, that might be her, might not be her. And I'm just like, okay,
The,
so that
the
that and I swear if you watch it again, you're going to even get more disgusted. And I'm someone that watches things over and over and over. It drives my husband absolutely crazy. And I'll probably watch it again. And there were so many crossovers with family law, and knowing that Britt and I are family law attorneys and we deal with a lot of really, really complex cases, we just wanted to touch on a few issues that we see. And, the first one is just that when people go through a separation or parents have trauma that they have never dealt with, and then that ends up in some sort of separation, whether they were married or they just, were raising a child together. As the children grow up, they are a product of their environment. And sometimes they will be closer to one parent than the other. And sometimes relationships that were really, really good, there will be a strain. And I can tell you, that mother-daughter relationships are hard. They are really, really, really hard. But this takes it to a whole nother level. I don't know that I've ever had a case that was this WTF ever. And you've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of stuff.
That's to put it lightly. It leaves you at a loss for words. And I say sitting as a rational, reasonable person, we try to understand and dig in and ask these questions about these cases and this case. How could someone do this? How could this happen? And contemplate it all. But we're putting that rational, reasonable lens on a situation and an individual who was not acting rationally. It's not ever going to make sense. It's the why question isn't ever really going to have a satisfying answer. I mean, we can sit here and talk about, concerns, mental health concerns and motivational concerns and what led us here. But at the end of the day, we're trying to put a rationale on something that's not a rational behavior.
So now, Britt, we deal with a lot of cases that there is some level of mental health concern or safety concern in cases as people separate and the court has to make custody visitation orders based on best interest. If you just, you had a client with facts even remotely on the same page, well, how would you handle it if you were representing dad here?
I mean, if I'm representing dad, we need an immediate full cessation of contact at this point. At the end of the day, we're always trying, our standard in California is best interest of the children. And truly, that means looking out for their health, their safety, their welfare. And the only way you're doing that in this circumstance when a parent is in some sort of crisis, because I think that's the only way to characterize whatever's happening with her mentally, whether this is a Munchausen by proxy, whether this is histrionic personalities or whatever label we could potentially put on this. This is a mom who's in crisis, and that crisis means she's no longer able to be healthy or safe for her daughter. So we're looking at immediate emergency protective orders. I think this case in particular gives a lot of specific abuse concerns for protective orders in the Domestic Violence Prevention Act that about contact. One of the big red flags and concerns I had watching is the contact between Kendra and Lauren while she was in prison. That kind of contact is only further harming and further creating additional issues. So if I've got dad, we're limiting contact. We don't want to continue to inflict additional abuse and additional trauma. And we want to make sure that there's therapeutic interventions. I think that definitely if I'm representing Lauren's dad, I want to make sure that he's getting her the help that she needs, that he's getting the help that he needs, and that if and when there ever comes a point in time where, Kendra is going to be reintroduced into Lauren's life in any capacity, it needs to be in a healthy way. I think we're looking at like therapeutic introductions down the line. But what I'm seeing in the documentary and the messaging that was happening, these love bombing messages
Gross.
were gross. And we would be immediately acting to make sure that that's not.
Yeah. And, again, for anyone who hasn't seen this, I hope you go back and watch it. It really is, pulls on so many different internal emotional heartstrings on a lot of levels. But Kendra did end up getting arrested in 2022. She was released on parole in August of 24. But while she was in prison, she had access, and it looked like she had quite a bit of access, to be honest, to social media and email. And on one hand, it was like nothing had ever happened, and mom was just away for a little bit and couldn't see her on a regular basis. And it showed me how much treatment both of them need. One, mom is somewhat delusional to reality on a whole nother level, because she thinks that she could literally just say, I'm sorry, I don't really know what happened, but by the way, I love you. I will protect you. I'm always your mom. I'm always here for you. You've just done what you've done for 2 years and not holding yourself accountable on any level. And then you could tell Lauren so badly, A, was scared for her mom, B, loved her mom, C, didn't want to admit her mom could do that, but even knowing all of that, still wanted some sort of relationship with her mom. And that's where I would have gone in on a domestic violence restraining order, and I would have got an order that there is zero contact. And I don't know that dad knew that this contact was going on. If he did, I would love to counsel him on some things that he could have done or he can continue to do. But in a case like this, when you have family law cases with a mental health issue, it is often not as easy to prove, that something's going on, like if you have physical abuse, right? So this is where you get CPS involved. Sam and I have talked a lot about, child protective services and the crossovers with a lot of these cases. And that is where, if I heard this story over the phone, like doing a consult, I would think it was so crazy that I would have to do my own independent research and maybe hire a private detective to get information for me to believe that it was actually true. Like, that's how out there it was. And the sad thing is, I just don't know that I see mom act ever truly putting in the work, being accountable, and really understanding from the deepest level of what she did to her daughter. But hey,
And,
let's make a documentary about it, and let's collect a paycheck, and let's keep this on the internet forever.
And that's the thing. I think there's a lot of my critiques on the documentary stem from the fact that it seemed almost like we're trying to take this ongoing cinematic or ongoing trauma to this child at the time, fresh into adulthood, I believe now, and make it cinematic and make it something that, we're pumping into people's TVs to consume. And, we'll sit here and we'll talk about it, we'll question what happened, and we'll analyze it from the different perspectives. But at the end of the day, these are people with real lives. Lauren at the end of the day has to live with what happened and learn to heal from it. Even just if you watch it back, you can see there are time jumps back and forth in the interviews. And I think especially with Lauren, and I'll commend her, on there's definitely a lot of growth. You can see that there's been healing and growth.
Yeah.
Actually pay attention and learn the timeline. So there's like outfit she's wearing, and that's happening in real time when this was occurring. And then there's a later interview. Netflix doesn't make it very clear. They don't clarify the timings of these interviews that they're using.
Yeah.
As they kind of piecemeal it together. But you can definitely, if you're watching for it, see the growth and the development and some of the healing that's taken place. I think this is going to be long-term healing, and not just for her, but for everybody involved. This isn't something where, I'll first say, first and foremost, despite all of her pandering and saying otherwise, Kendra is not the victim in any sense of the word. And the fact that she was allowed to play victim as much and as long as she did is only playing in to what I view, in my opinion, as some sort of issue where she needs that to be the center of attention, where she needs to be the victim. And she may have been a victim with what happened to her previously, but in what happened to her daughter, she is not a victim.
Agreed.
And it's
100%.
not just her daughter that's the victim, but we've got Owen, who will live with the scars of this for the rest of his life. And we've got other teenage girls who were being accused, who've had their phones downloaded by the FBI to review, their entire privacy invaded at a very young age, who've had their stability rocked, being questioned by their peers, by law enforcement, by their own parents, by the friends of their parents. We've got not just one, but multiple levels of trauma as this spider webs out.
Owen's parents, and I'm sure the mom, they didn't focus a lot on this, and I wish they would have focused more. She was very in tune, and I absolutely am on the same page as her, that I think that there was also a very deep obsession with mom and Owen. I think a lot of those text messages were projecting kind of things that she may have wanted to do with Owen as a teenage boy, or feelings that she had and was portraying it to come from someone else. I do think there was a really, really weird, inappropriate obsession with Owen. And I think she was very jealous of her daughter. I think she was jealous of that relationship. I think she was also jealous that maybe Owen had kind of taken the place as Lauren's favorite person, as much as a 13, 14, or 15-year-old boy can be. But there's a lot of underlying things. And I think that if Lauren, and you can tell, like Britt was talking about, that she was growing, because as of this documentary being ended, and I think somewhat present day, that they don't talk anymore since her release of prison. And I think if Lauren ever wants to sit down and have a conversation with her, that should be on Lauren as an adult making that deciding factor, and how, if she wants to have, a reintroduction, how that is done and in a healthy and safe way. But yeah, I felt for Owen's mom too. I mean, not only did she kind of go through this with her son and her son's girlfriend, but she also was a very, very close friend, with Kendra, which is a whole nother level. But I wish Netflix would have told a little bit more about that story as well.
And I think it raises a lot more questions and red flags for me, that the sexual nature of the messages that were being sent to me as we get to the resolution at the end of the documentary, which really isn't, there's no culpability, there's no answering to that aspect of it. I mean, to me, this is predatorial. You're sending sexually explicit messages to a
These were pornographic
13-year-old.
text messages, everybody.
Truly,
these were not, these were pornographic on every level.
We couldn't repeat them if we wanted to. We would be
yeah, they are
blocked and
X-rated,
removed.
and you can go find them on Reddit, I'm sure.
Horrific.
But they were.
And to have, the criminal result of her, she pled guilty to 2 counts of stalking a minor related to her daughter and related to Owen. But what about the sexual aspects of this? What about, I mean, to me, in my opinion, she should be on a list. She should be a sex offender. If you're going to send these kinds of messages to a child who's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life.
I agree 1000%. I was actually kind of disgusted she only got like 18 months.
Yeah, it was very
it was very, very short. And honestly, she pled guilty to stalking a minor. But like, I think you nailed it on the head right there, Britt, I thought it was way more than stalking a minor. That might be stalking your daughter. But the nature of those sexual predatory text messages were way beyond stalking, in my opinion. Way beyond.
And I think, let's think about this in the context of how long she spent tormenting these children. And she didn't even spend as long as the text messages went on, was longer than the amount of time that she spent in prison for it. So I
didn't even think about it that way.
She locks Owen and Lauren in this theoretical, imaginary prison of having to live every day with these messages, and the actual time she served isn't even.
Yeah, that one slipped my mind, but no, you're right. So if we had to take one lesson out of this documentary, my lesson would be, from the mom perspective, is talk to your kids and continue to make them feel like you're a safe place, and to be able to, open up to you about anything and everything, right? That's always what we want. How we react to that is, up to us. But if you're having any feelings that are not aligned with what a rational, reasonable parent would be feeling, then get some help. Like, talk about it, get treatment. People are ashamed to talk about the mental health, but then by ignoring the mental health, it ends up being 10 times worse. I can tell you that. I see it firsthand in my cases all the time.
And I think, when we talk about mental health, everybody's got battles they're dealing with. Everybody has their own struggles, and we see it daily in a family law context and in every context. It's not the mental illness so much that's the problem. It's the mental illness in crisis without proper intervention. There are plenty of people who have been diagnosed with some serious issues that still go on to be wonderful parents. And managing it.
People.
Exactly. And it's in every sense, it's with different mental things that you deal with substance abuse problems, you see it with addicts. I mean, you got to get it under control and address the problem head on. And if you're addressing the problem head on and you are being a safe and healthy person, then you're not going to end up in the problems that we're seeing here. I think the other thing really that we need to drive home and take home from this is being really aware of the dangers from a technological perspective. We see this more and more and more, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better as AI becomes more integrated in our society and our day-to-day lives. I mean, every younger generation is more well equipped to deal with technology than the prior generation. And I think, we need to be aware of the dangers that the high use of technology and the intertwinement of technology in our lives, our daily lives, the danger that that presents, especially to our vulnerable. That's why, we see a lot of these cases where, the people that are preyed on the most are children and elderly, because they tend to be the most vulnerable for different reasons. These fake numbers, the fake texts, the apps. I mean, there are applications you can spoof phone numbers and use.
You can fake a baby these days. You can get a fake sonogram.
If I really wanted to right now, I
Look
could
up
download
anything.
an app on my phone. I could make Kristen's phone number appear to be calling people, and I could use a deep fake of her own voice to make it sound like she's making all kinds of threats to people.
Yep.
There are
That's
devastating ways
frightening.
that this can be used. So I think we all have to be aware. You can't just live in fear, because this is the reality as tech becomes more advanced and these things become more, it happens more and more often. We have to be aware of it. Don't be scared of it. Hit it head on and speak about it. Talk about your kids about these potential issues and how to um, address it. And I think I'll close in saying one of the things that Kendra said in one of her interviews that really, really troubled me and I can't get out of my head is there's some time where they ask her, weren't you afraid that your daughter would follow through on you telling her to unalive herself or hurt herself? And she thinks about it and she goes, no. And she doesn't. She doesn't believe that for whatever reason, I think a culpability of your actions. But at the end of the day, you don't know. No one's going to have an answer on how someone's going to respond to something like that, especially when you're talking about children. So don't take for granted that you believe, oh, they're strong, they're not struggling. You don't know what's going on under the surface. So check in with your people, check in with your kids, have these vulnerable conversations, because you never know what could be the battle someone could be dealing with behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I know for myself, even when I'm having a rough day or I'm super stressed, I am really good at putting on a show, right? We have to get up, we got to put our suit on, we got to go to court. People's lives are, they're entrusting us with handling their case and their kids, which is most likely the most important thing in their world. But a lot of us might be not having the best day, or might be going through some personal things or health issues or family things. And so I try to remind that to myself all the time, is that, my daughter's 11 and she is beautiful and smart and confident and athletic. And while I love to think that she could handle any of these situations, we're all still human. And at some point something hits home and it might really affect us in a way that, that we hope it doesn't. And Roblox people, watch your kids messaging, watch their friend requests. And it's not just Roblox, it's any online gaming. I've been able to talk to a few FBI agents that have told me that this is where a lot of predators like to prey on younger kids that may not understanding by simply accepting a friend request or send me a picture. So there's lots of apps that you can put on your kids' devices that'll send you an alert if something is coming from a sketchy IP address, or if there's anything that raises a red flag about the interaction that's going on. So I encourage you to do all of those. And you know what my favorite line of the whole documentary is when Kendra claimed that she thought somebody else was truly doing the messaging at first, when she actually was getting interrogated and ultimately ended up coming clean and admitting. But she claimed that at first she truly thought it was someone else. And I said, you are such a lying POS, because you never thought that, because nobody was doing it, because you knew you were physically doing it. But again, I do think that there's a bigger piece to that. There's a bigger piece to that puzzle that needs to be finished. I don't think it was legitimate. I think it was deceptive. But I also think she has a lot of trauma that she needs to work through on her own before any sort of relationship could ever be had between those two.
And I think, in closing, if this episode, if it resonated with you, if you yourself are a victim of cyberbullying, of harassment, of abusive behaviors, if you're suffering with self-harming ideologies, if you're believing that maybe this world is better without you, first of all, it's not. And second of all, reach out. You're not alone. There are people who love you, who care, who want to support you. We're going to include some resources here with the show notes. Please, if you If you need them, they're there. And even if you don't need them, take a look, share them with the people around you, because this is something that often goes unsaid and in silence, and it doesn't have to.
And a lot of our episodes will touch on different aspects just because we're attorneys and it's not always easy to turn off those attorney brains and our analytical thinking that we do. And I know this show might have been a little bit more personal to a lot of people, but we are super happy to share this content with you. And we don't always get it right. We don't always get it wrong. We're not here to solve cases. We are here to encourage everybody to think outside the box, ask their own questions. Don't believe everything that's shoved in front of your face, and just kind of, keep doing that. Keep doing that in every aspect of your life. And that's what makes all of us so individual and unique, that we all have these brilliant minds and we're able to analyze facts and not always agree. But we loved doing this show with you. If there's questions you guys want to ask us about anything about this show, The Unknown Caller, please do so. You can send us a message, a DM, or you can put it in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you liked it. We are trying to build our audience. So if it's something that you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and send us a comment. I promise you will get a response from either one of us personally on this video. And if you want to hear a little bit more of the legal stuff that we do have another show with content that is more geared about family law and divorce and custody and all the things about that. And that is Custody Queens. So if you like that, go over that way and give us a like and subscribe as well. On that note, this is going to wrap up today's episode.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.